The story begins with Mimori Tuka being chased by a minotaur, but how did this all happen? It all started when his class were teleported to another world. The goddess Visus announces that they are special and they will all become heroes. However, due to an aptitude test, the goddess had made the decision to dispose of the protagonist. The prota is mortified by the revelation. Based on the aptitude test, out of all his class members he is the weakest in E rank. She feels that he will hold back the high-ranking members. She smiles without a hint of remorse and says, "Won't you get disposed of obediently for everyone's sakes?" He tries to reason with the goddess, however the prota was never truly a part of the class, he was more of a background character. He protests that he was summoned by force, so when she deems anyone of being worthless she will dispose of them just the same. However, his classmates see things differently, they are only happy that it is not them. He falls to his knees when they treat him like he never existed. Suddenly from the crowd someone speaks out about the injustice. S-rank Sengo Ayaka. She tries to rally the support of her fellow classmates. Suddenly the goddess appears from behind her and knocks her out. The prota rushes to assist his fallen friend as the goddess starts crying crocodile tears and accuses the prota of causing her heart to go astray. A guy from his class grabs his collar and shows him away, then accused him of being a pervert. All his classmates gathered around him and agree that he should be disposed of. He tries to plead to their humanity but no one listens. They tell him to leave because he is worthless and has no use. They turn their backs on him and leave him to his fate. Since everyone agrees, the goddess extends her hand as it starts to glow. The protagonist begins to cry, as the goddess says his death shall be nourishment for the future. He clenches his hand so tight that blood begins to drip from his palm. He decides to stop crying because that won't work against these monsters. The goddess says that it is okay to cry and he should be proud. Our prota decide to go out with a little bang that makes the goddess show a very ugly face. She activates the spell and the prota wakes up in a cave. The prota is in his knees, he grabs his chest, grits his teeth and then screams. After he's down he wonders what should happen from here. He remembers that he was granted skills upon entry into the new world. While he was checking out his skill, a minotaur appeared behind him. It yells out a ear-piercing roar. It tries to grab the protagonist but he missed. The prota falls in the ground. He believed this is the end. He tries to run and sees the face of a person behind a boulder. He grabs the person and asks for help, then he sees that it is just a dried up corpse. He screamed because he has finally understood the meaning of disposal. To slow down in this place is certain death. He opens the skill window and realizes that he only has paralysis, poison and sleep. The prota gets upset because these skills are considered low class and useless. He hears the roar of the minotaur and decides that if he is going to die anyway, he will die fighting. He uses the skill paralysis and the minotaur stops in its tracks. He noticed that his skill had worked. He starts to wonder what are the conditions needed to activate his skills. He activates a poison skill and it takes effect on the minotaur. His curiosity was at its peak. He decided to use the minotaur as a test subject. It took an hour for it to die. After its death, the prota level was increased from level 1 to 258. He takes a cloak from a corpse. The prota promised that he will survive until he bashed the goddess head in for all those who were disposed of. In the next scene we see an elf taking a bath in the spring. Afterward it changes its clothes and goes deeper into the woods. On top of a mountain the prota used a paralysis skill to freeze all the monsters. The prota is out of breath. He lays in his back as the monsters get closer. His hate for the goddess keeps him going. He extends his hand and the enemies are in his view. The skill activates. The prota thinks that the monsters are too strong than usual. The thought of jumping from 1 to 258 is insane. He concludes that she never had any intention of letting him go alive. He remembers what the goddess said to him and that snaps him back to reality. He activates his powers and poisons the monsters. As he uses the poison skill he remembers his childhood of being abused by his parents. He is sent outside on the veranda as the snow falls. He blamed himself for his suffering. Later he falls asleep hungry. Someone has called the cops and his parents. They begin to shout and scream that no one can decide how they treat their brat. A huge fist attacks the prota before he snaps back to reality. He whispers "I'm sorry" underneath his breath. He starts to laugh and he says that his life has always been hell. It's almost time for the paralysis to wear off. He suddenly had a thought to use sleep as a third layer of attack. The monsters start to fall asleep and he realized that the three effects working together are most effective. It's possible for him to defeat all his enemies without letting them move at all. The monsters are starting to look like experience points. Unreasonable things will keep happening to the prota, but there are people that won't listen to him, and there are people that don't deserve to be alive. If they are trying to kill the prota then he will just be faster and kill them instead. Unlike before, he has powerful skills at his disposal. He gets a notification telling him that his skill has increased from level 1 to 2. Afterwards he finds an encyclopedia telling him about the danger of a monster called Soul Eater. He finds a safe room that is open with magic. He thinks it'll be dangerous, but a week has passed and he is running out of food. He entered the safe room. He thinks that it is man-made. He also believes that the exit is near. His skill had increased to the point where he can attack multiple enemies at once, in his field of vision, but the only issue is that he's vulnerable to attacks from his blind spots. However, to solve this problem, he has developed a sixth sense. An undead monster appeared. He wonders if his skill will work in the undead. He decides not worry about it because, if he feels he will die, so he will make that monster as guinea pig. In the next scene we see a smiling Proto complimenting a girl. She calls herself a coward and the Proto tells her that she is a kind coward. She smiles. Someone calls her Kabuto Kashima. A girl named Ikusaba calls her. Kabuto apologizes for not listening. The girl says that the S and A rank have too much power. They can do whatever they want. The B, C and D rank cannot keep up, so she offers that they join forces. She's a B rank, so she offers to be the leader of the group. However, Kabuto is an airhead and is also a D rank. She tears her shirt and says, "Look at those melons, they're huge." She covers her melons. They want her to persuade the men into becoming their meat shields. Before the S and A rank leave, they must gather others to help to protect them. Kabuto asks why. She responds, "We were forcibly taken away from our worlds without a choice. Do you really think they're going to let us go home? Have you forgotten what happened to the Proto?" Kabuto doesn't want to do it, but she is scared. Meanwhile, the Proto has already defeated the dragon skeleton. He reads an encyclopedia talking about the great sage. The goddess had disposed of the sage because he had become an eyesore. The Proto comes to the conclusion that this is not a place just for E ranks, but a place that harbor any inconvenience to the goddess. He always wanted to be a kind, cowardly person, but now he is stalking a tower of corpses, unable to feel a single thing except for excitement. He begins to laugh. In an area of the dungeon he finds a door which seems to be the exit indicated by the airflow of the air. He sees an indentation on the door that needs something that fits to open it. He spots a head made of stone. With a stone in its forehead, he thinks it's a booby trap that activates when you get close. He decided to test it with paralysis. His stamina is almost depleted, so he decides to stay at the very edge of his range just in case. As he tries to activate his skill, a laser pierces his hand and his shoulder. He realized that the stone is actually the Soul Eater he read about before. The stone read the Proto like a book. He thinks of a way to defeat the stone, but in every simulation he is killed. He thinks of exiting the floor and returning when he is stronger, but that won't work because all the other monsters have already been killed. He thinks that he should live there and give up on trying to leave the labyrinth. He gives up in that thought. He rather die trying to kill that goddess. Slime emerges from the stone's mouth that take the form of humans. The Proto was going to attack but stops when he realizes these are the victims. The monster starts to laugh maniacally. The Proto recognizes this expression because he has seen it many times. It is enjoying his reactions. It spits more of them at the Proto. The Proto begin the screen for them to stay away. He activates the skill Paralyzed and wonders why it wasn't obstructed. Is it because it was not the original body? However, he cannot cast poison because they are just like him. He begins to falter. He can poison monsters, but he cannot poison his fellow comrades that have fallen victim to the goddess. The stone head smirks as it enjoys the misery of the Proto. Souls of the dead appear to the Proto asking for help. He screams, get back," as the monster laughs. He screams for help as the stone head glides closer. The Proto takes this opportunity to cast Paralyzed. The head falls to the ground. The Proto says, "You strong people, that's what your faces all look like. Your arrogance cost you big time."